Vivek, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Good to be on. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. Your identity politics, it's so interesting to see the death of merit in this country. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday where, we have these, people where, the president of the United States comes out and says, I'm only going to pick a black woman for this role and a black person of color for this role. And look, I understand how well that tests, I guess, to some people out there. But when you're taking out 95% of your options, you're not picking the best candidate. You're eliminating many people that might be just as good. There's this thing where now the left is picking people from other immutable characteristics first and then looking at merit. And that's supposed to be the opposite of what we're doing.
Yes, it is a form of psychological slavery, by the way. And I think this assault on merit is an assault on the American soul. I think we need to put the merit back into America. And that goes for every sphere of our lives. Even if you think about this at a macro philosophical level, merit in who gets into this country. Think about that, right? Letting people in whose first act of entering this country is a law-breaking one, instead of actually law-abiding, contributing citizens who could be immigrants to this country. Merit in who gets ahead, of course. I mean, this was Martin Luther King's vision not that long ago, that you get ahead in this country, not in the color of your skin, but in the content of your character and your contributions. And I just think that this is evidence of I would say, a form of self-hatred in America, because this was the defining spirit, that you could get ahead in this country with your own hard work, your own commitment, and your own dedication. That created the greatest nation known to mankind, the greatest system, the greatest economic engine known to mankind. Yet now we feel the need to apologize for it, and part of how we apologize for it is through this attack on merit itself.
How do the American people view this, Vivek? Because I think if you watch the media, almost everything is the opposite. We're not looking at merit at all. We're looking at all these other characteristics, these other ways to sort people into these, globs of, these group of race and color and religion and all these other things. Do the American people sense that this is wrong? Do they still have that same spirit that made this country so great?
I think they do, but they're afraid to speak about it in the open. And this is where the assault on merit intersects with the assault on free speech, because those two created a confluence that gives us this new woke cancer in America. The things that we were just talking about, the values of making sure you get ahead on the basis of the content of your contributions rather than the color of your skin. I think most Americans believe these things to be true. I think most Americans also think their neighbors and their colleagues and their teammates and their classmates believe these things to be true too, but they can't be sure about it because you're not allowed to talk about that in the open in the modern day. And so what I think is we're a hair's trigger away from an American revival if we can get this right. All we needed to do is break down those conversational silos, start talking openly again. And what we will realize is maybe not every person, but about 80% of this country is fully committed to those ideals. Maybe they disagree about corporate tax rates, but those basic rules of the road, I think most of this country is on board for, whether they're black or white, or even Democrat or Republican. And that's why I'm so optimistic about the possibility of this American revival, even though it seems like we're in this inevitable national decline. I don't think it actually has to be that way. But the question is whether we can actually get to a place where we can start talking about that openly again. If so, we're on a path to our best days ahead. I honestly believe that.
Yeah. And one of the things you've talked about a lot coming on the radio program as well is the ESG stuff, environmental, yes, social, and governance standards that it's sort of the same thing, right? It's taking merit out of, in this case, maybe investment and money in the economy. And I've heard people talking about this lately where they say, look, the ESG thing, I understand it's important, but the average American has no idea what it even is. Can you kind of bring people from 0 to 60 on this so they understand what they're looking at and what the dangers are?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really important that people see it. So what's happening today is a handful of large financial institutions are using the money of everyday citizens, probably many, if not most of you watching this right now, to tell American companies to adopt racial equity audits, to adopt emissions caps in ways that actually most Americans whose money they're investing disagree with. That's a large-scale form. It's a fiduciary breach. That may be a long way of saying it's a kind of financial fraud. Telling clients you're actually going to do one thing, focus exclusively on making money, when in fact you're pushing these environmental and social goals along with it. Not just by picking stocks differently, but more importantly, by voting your shares and telling CEOs in this country how they're supposed to adopt these social agendas. That's a problem. It's a breach of trust. But the good news is Americans can solve that problem for themselves. They don't have to wait to every November to go to the ballot box. They can self-educate about whether or not their money was used to vote for a racial equity audit at a company like Apple or Home Depot, as happened just last year with trillions of dollars worth of capital under management. The good news is I still think that Americans are empowered to take action if they can educate themselves. And that's why I think that knowledge, as it was for one of my heroes, Frederick Douglass in American history, knowledge can be the path to liberation today as well.